The Selma to Montgomery March was a voter registration effort that Dr. King and his associates, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, felt it would be a way of dramatizing the importance of getting Congress to pass this bill. The thing that galvanized the outside world, from my perspective, was the confrontation with the Alabama National Guard at the Pettus Bridge in Selma as the march was beginning. Rushing the marchers and beating them and creating chaos. Those images went out on television, all over. That's what made the attack at the beginning of the march at the Pettus Bridge so offensive, because they had knelt down to pray, and then Alabama National Guard told them don't advance, and so they prayed, and then they got up, maybe took a couple of steps, and because the Alabama National Guard had been defied, they attacked them. I was in my middle year of seminary at the Episcopal Theological School in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it was March 1965, and the student council at the seminary was trying to figure out if there were people who could go from the seminary. And so I, with a couple of others, volunteered to do it. This was my whole introduction to civil rights. So I went and got there toward the end of the march, as the last day or so, and coming into Montgomery. It was inspiring. I mean, you had people like Joan Baez, Peter, Paul, and Mary, people that you go in concert to hear. They were on the march, with you. And there was just a spirit about the thing that things are really going to change. We got into Montgomery that day and heard Dr. King. There are probably between 30 and 50,000 people there in Montgomery. It was just an amazing day, the culmination of 8 days on the road. We had the Alabama National Guard had turned from being confrontational to actually protecting us. They're on both sides of the road to make sure we were going to be okay. And it was an inspirational day. One of my seminary classmates, Jonathan Daniels, Jonathan went back to do the heavy lifting, to do the actual voter registration stuff, and this is in Hayneville, Alabama. And he was there, through the summer, but, all the crowds are gone now. It's just Jonathan with a few other people who are committed to this process of making the African-American vote real. It was a hot, dusty afternoon, and they had to wait for their ride to come. And they walked into this general store or toward it, and there was a man, Tom Coleman, who ended up, we found out was a deputy sheriff, who pointed a gun at this 16-year-old African-American girl, Ruby Sales. And my classmate, Jonathan, pushed her away and took the blast of the shotgun and was killed instantly. And that changed, our lives. His spirit and his sacrifice just has stayed with me, and it led me to my professional life as a clergy person into serving urban parishes and doing urban work, and eventually bringing me to St. Paul's, here in Richmond. But pushing for those issues, trying to figure out ways that we can be a more inclusive community, and how we can push back around some of the things that are so negative and separate one group from another, and also just an advocacy for the people at the margins. I mean, one of the things that I'm really happy about, is the way St. Paul's Church, which is where I came to Richmond to serve that congregation, and after the Civil War, the windows were put in to honor General Lee and to Jefferson Davis, and both families were participants in the life of St. Paul's. And of course, it was built on a slave economy. It probably had slave laborers building the place. I was surrounded by these. I dealt with the Daughters of the Confederacy, and the Confederate battle flag being in the kneelers. But then, when my successor, Wallace Adams Riley, who was from South Carolina, so the Mother Emanuel shooting and Dylan Roof in front of the Confederate battle flag in sort of a defiant pose, it set him off, and he being surrounded by these Confederate symbols at St. Paul, he said, well, we got to do something about this. And so he initiated an examination of that, which was a long period of time, a lot of conversation, really hard work. But it's really brought them out. I mean, I was worshiping there on Sunday. It's really brought them out in an entirely new place. But it's really been hard. There are a lot of people who've left the church. I mean, for say this conversation's too hard to have. But for the people who've stayed with it, it's brought the congregation out in an entirely different place. So they say they're for diversity and inclusion. I mean, you feel it in the place. It's not just lip service to something. And it's because they've done heavy lifting around those issues, had those conversations, listen to each other, even people who don't agree with what you're doing. It's not like we're imposing something. We want to engage in the conversation. And so it's created a spirit of openness that I think has changed the landscape for them. And so I'm really happy for them. The leadership of the parish in my years there was progressive, and we were concerned with the urban poor and doing all kinds of important things to help the marginalized and advocate for public policies that would be inclusive. But there's, as it turned out, all these years later, there's a whole lot more work to be done. I mean, change scares lots of people, and it's just hard work. But it's important work. It's good work. Dr. King's comment that history bends toward the arc of justice, and I'm betting on that. I'm hoping it's true.